emergencies, we learn from them, or we get the
Good.
hopefully exciting stuff.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you for coming this evening. This is, as you know, the kickoff to our budget season. Today, we're just doing a quick, brief PowerPoint that our City Controller, Amir, has put together for us, just to do the brief overview of the budget, just to pretty much let everyone know what to expect. With that said, we'll let the City Clerk bring that up on TV for us, and then, Amir, the floor will be yours whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Okay, so this presentation is just going to be a quick presentation. It's not going to be a lengthy one. I'll talk about how the budget process goes in the city here. Some of the highlights that we've had during the year. Some of the things that we'll be looking forward to doing in the coming year. Then I'll give some graphs to present the last 4 years of how we've collected our revenues and how we've utilized them. And then I'll give you some of my conclusions from these graphs and how I see some of the things that the city faces and what kind of challenges we have, and then we talk about what some of the council priorities should be or are going to be that you guys can recommend to us to either make it part of our budget, or at least we need to look at things from a long-term perspective for the city. And finally, what the next few steps are going to be in the coming months to finalize the budget. So the city basically follows the recommendations of the State of Michigan Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act. And what that requires is that the Michigan Department of Treasury recommends that the local units use activity-based budgeting, which basically means that the budgeted revenue and sources of expenditure be determined by their sources and the activity levels. When we talk about activity levels, it could be both in terms of the departments that we have in the city, as well as the projects that we'll be doing and the various funds that we account for in the city. And then obviously, we account for the various projects in terms of funding through grants or through revenues from the city sources. In terms of revenue, it's prudent to recognize, and that's what the recommendation is also, only revenues which are assured, and the ones that are not as assured or could be doubtful, then we should have a contingency plan to reduce our expenditures so that we have a balanced budget. Because at the end of the day, our budget needs to be balanced when we pass a budget. And if our revenues are going to reduce, then obviously we need to reduce some of our expenditures to cater for that reduction in revenue. Having said that, this is a guideline. I don't think we followed that last year because our this year's budget, we budgeted lower revenues and higher expenditures. But we do have a opening balance, so we could have a deficit and sort of cater to the difference through that opening balance. But in no circumstances can we have a deficit budget which will wipe out our opening balance.
Correct.
Am I going through screens for you, or you're gonna tell me when to start?
Oh, please, you're going
Which
to,
page are you on?
I'm on page 5.
Ooh, you move quick.
Okay, so that, yeah, this one.
Okay. Just tell me next when you're ready.
Okay, all right. So in terms of the overall budget process, the city manager provides a preliminary budget information to the department heads. And we are right now going through that process where we have disseminated some of the information and guidelines to the department heads. And we are meeting with them on a one-on-one basis to, you know, sort of look at what has happened during the year, what to expect in the next 5 months, and then talk about, you know, the coming year in terms of budget, revenues and expenses. So I expect that we would be collecting the information from the department heads, you know, by the end of this month. And during that time, we'll be preparing on the information. And starting next month, you know, we'll be having sessions with the council and the mayor for reviewing the budget.
This week is actually heavy with all the meetings with the various department heads, sort of doing the preliminary with everybody going through it, so it's been quite busy around here.
Yeah, what we've tried to do is to have an interaction with the department heads and to have them own their budgets, to have them, you know, be responsible for what is happening in their departments. And some of them have not been familiar with the process, some of them have not done it before. What we intend to do is to try and ensure that going forward, we have a regular review on a monthly basis with these department heads internally, and they try to keep track of their budgets on a regular basis internally every month. And so that way that, you know, if there are any issues within their budgets, or if there are any anomalies, we get that highlighted ahead of time or as timely as possible, so that we can, you know, we have time to take any corrective actions that we need to. One of the problems that, you know, this year we faced was obviously because of the high turnover in the department, and we were quite behind in terms of, you know, recognizing and in terms of documenting and loading up all the transactions in the system. So we didn't have an updated reports for our department heads in terms of, you know, all the revenues and expenses being there in the reports. So we are almost caught up with it now, and I expect that by the end of this month, we would be caught up with up to January. We are always running a month behind because, you know, we get our bank statements at the end of the month after the month has closed. So based on that, we do our reconciliations, and we make sure that everything that has not passed through the system is documented through journal entries in the BSNA system and in the general ledger. So once the budgets are submitted by the department heads, city manager reviews the budget and looks at the overall situation of the budget. And then we present the budget, what we feel to the council, and then we have a discussion with the council on the budget. And after that discussion, and if there are any changes, the city council passes a General Appropriations Act, which basically approves the budget along with the amendments in the current fiscal year. So for example, you will have a sample of the requested budget, and I've just given a sample in here, where it shows you, what the activity was last year and what we are recommending for next year. and what is the amendment in the budget going to be, and what is going to be next year's budget. And similarly, in terms of the appropriations ordinance, next page, please. You will have, department-wise budget for appropriations, which will give you last year's activity, this year's projections, and next year's budget. Next. Okay, some of the highlights during the year. One of the major things that we anticipate a resolution on two major lawsuits that the city has been defending for a long time. One of the lawsuits requires us to finish 3 homes that we are constructing, subsequently ending a 54-year legal battle. And then another suit necessitates the city continuing on its long-term sewer infrastructure plan. So we are working on both of these activities, and moving forward, both of these are going to be one of the major projects that we handle in the city. We are completing the development of the Veterans Park, and we hope to hand this over to the Parks Conservatory, sometime during the year, probably in the next couple of months.
Probably longer than that.
Oh,
So
okay.
the Parks Conservancy is in the process right now of searching for a new executive director. The hope was last year that was gonna happen, but it got significantly delayed because of a turnover in that organization. So maybe by the end of the year if we're lucky.
All right, so we are purchasing land for subsequent construction of a new DPW building. Currently, we lease a facility in Detroit, and we would like to have a bigger and more purpose-built accommodations for our DPW staff and equipment.
And just an update, we hope to be closing on that within the next month.
Okay.
We're waiting for probate to wrap that up and able to send them the check. So we're already in communication with Hennessy on that to get some preliminary stuff on the way as well.
We are continuing with the replacement of the lead service lines in the city, and that is a project that will obviously continue for a few years until we are able to replace all of them. This is being funded through various grants, and I think this is something that we are focusing on to try and do it as quickly as possible. I believe we are already ahead of the requirements. We had a meeting with Hennessy, and they told us that we are ahead of where we should be.
Yeah, that project's progressing nicely. Our predecessors sought out some state aid as far as bonds go that are forgivable. We've processed those, so we are actually good on the funding for the next couple of years. With that said, we're still seeking grants to do that. In addition, the state of Michigan just announced too that they're allocating a whole lot of funding for that, so we anticipate going after that as well. Yes, Councilwoman?
Didn't we receive notification that we didn't replace enough service lines in 2022?
So, yes and no. We didn't get enough done in the requisite time frame, but we
Okay.
had an extension to actually get it done at the end of the year. We did make what we needed to do.
Okay, for the
but we
2022, it was just late.
The initial
Okay.
deadline, which is a very common thing. It's not really a big thing. But we are significantly rocking and rolling on that. I do believe we're actually ahead of the curve in the area on that, as far as that goes. But we got a long way to go. We have thousands to do still, so, but we'll get there. So we have to do between 5 to 7% of the overall each year, which is, I think, around 380-ish, so, but it's a lot, it's a lot to do.
It's a lot to do, but I think both Max and I are of the view that we need to push it with the engineering company and try and close this, but again, everything will depend on the, funding sources.
And workers.
Yeah,
And-
well, workers
Mhm.
too,
And
but,
workers.
at the end
Yeah.
of the day, funding sources are very critical. So we wanna make sure that, we are tying this with that, the expenditures with the funding sources. The other thing, we wanna make sure that when we do a replacement of the service line, we look at a complete overall requirement in the city in terms of the infrastructure. So we don't want to replace a line and replace a road and do everything and then find out 4 months later we need to do something else on that road. So I think we had a detailed meeting with Hennessy on this, and our instructions to them was to look at it holistically, and let's have a plan where we do this, and whatever infrastructure requirement is there for that area or for that road or for that sewage, we incorporate all of that together rather than, doing things haphazardly.
So that's actually one of the reasons you didn't see any of the resurfacing this past year, because we're trying to get the lead service lines done, and we wanted to get ahead of that because we want to essentially follow up with the surfacing behind the lead service lines. Now granted, not every one of those streets that got lead service lines is gonna get resurfaced, but the worst of the few,
Yeah.
for instance Fleming, which we all know is really bad, we're gonna try and get done, and we're hoping that this construction season, maybe we do 6, so last year's, this year's, and whatever else we get. So we're gearing up. Hennessy's already got their marching orders to get that together and start getting the bids out. We are lucky to have Hennessy, who is very aggressive in seeking out grants and money for us, and helping us get this in the row. So, like I said, we're ahead of the curve on this in comparison, so.
I just have a little concern when I saw the state violations letter, or what do you guys call it, or the, when you did not meet the requirements as they expected, and we received a notice from the state.
It's routine, Councilman.
Routine.
It literally, if
And
you miss
what-
the date, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. They literally
Uh-huh.
just, the form letter goes out and we anticipated. I believe that's not the first time that's happened, but we had to the end of the year to catch up and we got what we
Well,
needed done, so.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you understand
Yeah, yeah,
how that
definitely.
works. From our perspective, my perspective would be like, we're not meeting the requirements. We're not doing
No, no.
enough work. And we're gonna be taken over by the states or
No,
whatnot, you know what I mean?
Nothing like that, nothing like that.
So,
I think
that
that
was
is a
the-
routine matter that happens to all the cities. And the other thing that we tried to make sure was that, how we are doing in comparison to, the rest of the cities around us. And as per Hennessy, we are ahead of the curve on this.
Okay.
And like Max said, we want to replace the water lines as quickly as possible, but we want to do it in a planned way. We don't want to, replace the lines and then find out, oh, we need to do something else there.
Yeah, it's causing the residents inconvenience,
Well,
leave things behind and then
Yeah,
go back.
I know, but this is something that.
But it's a
is
good
moving
plan.
the
We do
infrastructure.
Think ahead and we
Yeah.
plan out and do those
Yeah,
things right.
that's the whole objective.
It wouldn't be inconvenience for the residents because they leave the things, behind and they go back and they say, whoa, we just finished that and you out there again.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
okay.
So that's what we want to avoid.
Sure.
We want to make sure that, when we do something, we don't have to go and dig again.
Sure. Thank you.
So we're, in addition to the replacement of lead service lines, we'll be replacing and resurfacing some of the streets as well as some of the alleys. Next. Okay, looking ahead, one of the things that we were expecting this year but didn't happen, and we were lucky, was the Dickerson facility, which is going to close down or is closed down. I don't know what the status
It's
is.
still functioning as of right now.
Yeah.
From what I understand, they're using it for juveniles, but it's happening.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of.
so, we budgeted half the amount for this year, but we actually got the full amount, so that's a bonus, that's the upside. On the other hand, next year, we may not budget anything for it, depending on, what the situation is with that facility.
Let's
so
hope
that'll be-
construction delays.
Yeah. So that's a significant amount. I mean, you're talking about 1.3 million, of revenue out of a revenue of 20 million, so that's more than 5%, of the city's revenue. So that's a significant loss. We do have a CBA coming up from the fire department, which you heard last time, from their union rep, so, that's something that, we would have to negotiate and go through. There is significant investment required in equipment, both in fire and police. in the next, few years, to replace some of the,
Fire engines.
fire
turnout
engines,
gear.
yeah, trucks, police cars, things like that. So I think there is a need. What we are doing is we are trying to find sources of grants for these, replacements, so that we don't have to spend our money on it.
Is it all mostly vehicles?
So we need fire trucks. The fire department could use all the turnout gear. But we're actively, the fire chief right now is working on some grants he's writing, that we're gonna be applying for. We don't know what we can or can't get yet, so, I mean, we're trying to formulate some plans now and see what we can get help with, so.
Yeah, but we have to meet with both fire chief and police chief tomorrow, and day after, to go over their budgets and their requirements. I did have a, discussion with Matt, and went to the fire station, looked at all their engines, looked at all their facilities, and to be honest, they're not in good shape.
Yeah.
The police department's actually in better shape as far as gear is concerned right
Yeah.
now. We do have some funding for them, from various sources that the fire department's not privy to. So we're gonna try and see what we can do with the fire department.
Yeah, because, you look at the building from outside, it looks very nice. Once you go in, it's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, my focus would be to prioritize these two areas, and provide them with their tools, and these are tools actually in their hands, so that they can, serve the city better. And we'll try and source, them through grants and, other sources of revenue, frankly, because we don't have the budget in our revenue unless we, increase taxes or do something.
Yeah.
So, water rates are going to go up. We had a meeting with GLEVA, and they informed us, they've already given us the new rates, which is subject to the final approval from their board, but these rates are going to go up. We are going to have an update into there's a very complicated financial model that we have to update with the new rates, which will give us what the new rates are going to be for the city. And this takes into account not just the rates that are going up by GLEVA, but it also takes into account some of the investment required in the water infrastructure, both water and sewage and treatment. So we have to cater for not just the future infrastructure in it, but, the rates that are already going up for the, all the other, for literally everyone. So that is something that, we'll have in the budget.
Amir,
Yeah.
just for time's sake,
Yeah.
are you planning on finishing these slides today, or are you planning on continuing on another budget meeting?
Well,
We're supposed to
Wait.
get through them.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, I'll speed it up.
okay.
All right, so we are working on, with Hennessy to complete and update the city's long-term plan. Next. Now, this is a slide which tells you from 2019 to 23 how the various sources were for the general fund. And as you can see, our sources of revenue increased by 9% from 2019-20 to 2020-21. So 9% increase in 21, another 19% increase in 22. However, for 2023, we budgeted a 15% reduction in 2022. I think part of it was, small part, or some part of it was the Dickerson facility, but there were other areas like the income tax and, property tax and some of the other areas where our revenues were slated to come down. I personally feel that the number that we have in the budget, we're going to exceed that. So we'll have a better revenue this year than what we had budgeted for. Next,
For 2022 or 2023?
2022, 23,
Oh,
fiscal
thank
year
you.
23.
Yep.
And then, in terms of how we spent our money and expenditures, our expenditures went up by 15% in 21 from 2020. They went up by 1% in 22, and they were budgeted to go up by 7% in 23. So we had a, delta of almost 3% between our revenue and our expenditures. So our revenue were budgeted at almost 18 million, and our expenditure was budgeted at 21 million. Again, in terms of our expenditures, I feel we will be, we'll do better than what our budget is. So we'll be lower than what our budget is. So our difference between the revenue and expenditure is going to be much smaller than what we had originally provided. Next. Okay, sources of revenue for 2020. I'll just concentrate on three big numbers, three big areas that we have in terms of revenue: property taxes, income tax, and state share of the revenue. Property taxes 41%, income tax 16%, and the
Am I on the correct slide?
Yeah.
What page are you?
page, I don't know, 12?
Yeah, it's a 41%, 16%, and 20%,
Yeah,
right?
so total of 76% in these three areas. 76% of the revenue came from these three areas. Next. In terms of our expenditures, two major areas: salaries or employee-related costs, and retirement costs. The two of them, make up 74% of our costs. And there's nothing we can do much about it. These costs are going to go up. Next year, in 21, the three areas of revenue constitute 73% compared to 76% the year before. Next. And the two areas of expenditures, 68% compared to 74% the year before in 21. In 2022, our revenue, these three areas constituted 78% of the revenue, whereas the expenditure constituted in those two areas about 66%. What we budgeted is 76% in these three areas in terms of revenue for the year 2023. Next. Next.
Did it go?
Next. Yeah, so 76% in these three areas for the budget in 23, and about 70% in terms of our, those two areas of expenditure in 2023. So I think let's move on to conclusions. Revenues compared to 2022 are declining. We need to look for, higher sources of revenue. For this, we'll have to do some thinking and planning, how we can generate more revenue for the city. As I said earlier, major sources of revenue are from those three areas: property taxes, income taxes, and state share of the revenue. Our fee revenue is low, but our fee schedule has not been, revised in a while, and it does require some revision and updation. So, we are, as part of the budget process, we will be reviewing some of the fees and charges, and, that'll become part of the approval for the council. Our major cost, as I said earlier, is employee related. It's fixed cost, it's going up and it will continue to increase. One of the major challenges that we face in this city is that we are understaffed in all the departments. And as a result, we are not able to, complete the job as efficiently as we should be doing. And as a result of which, we probably do have some revenue slippages, we do have, additional expenses. So I think there's a need for us to review the overall staffing requirements in the city. And we are going to do that as part of our budget process to review all of that, and then we'll bring our recommendations to the city. The other problem that we do have as part of the city is we are way below the market in terms of our remuneration, and people are working twice as hard, getting paid a lot less, and that's just compounding the problem. So we need to review all of that, and that is something that Max and I would work on, and we'll try and have better data when we present it to you guys. One of the major things that we do need is major investment in infrastructure, both in terms of water, sewage, roads, replacement of lead service lines. So I am going to work with Hennessy engineers to try and get a feel of what is going to be our requirement for the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. What are we talking about in terms of overall investment in the city infrastructure? And once we have that number, we would need to see how we can fund that through taxes, grants, other sources of revenue for the city, have a long-term plan for the city, how we want to move forward, trying to attract new sources of revenue. So next, as part of the process, we will ask the council, so, the council has time to prepare their own areas of priorities and, what they feel that, we should be concentrating on. So, next page. So, we'll have a budget session on March 13 where, the council and the mayor can present their priorities, identify opportunities where we can increase our revenues, identify opportunities to decrease expenditures, and have discuss the proposed departmental budget. Next. This is the calendar that you guys approved in the last meeting, which basically outlines, the different dates for our different meetings to approve the budget.
So we scheduled 3 full work sessions of an hour and a half apiece. We're hoping it's enough. If not, then we will adjust accordingly. Last year it was less than that.
Yeah,
but,
so, we'll see. We'll, as things progress, we may just need to, who knows?
So we're gonna have, basically all the department heads will be here, and we'll be going pretty much line by line, everyone's department, and getting an idea of what we have.
So you had mentioned that you were planning on, as part of this process, evaluating the fee schedule and then the employee staffing situation. When are we going to expect to see some of those numbers coming up to us?
When we present the
At-
budget
at
So you'll get a copy of the fee schedule as we go. That is something we actually do every year. All the department heads review it as far as it pertains to their department and make recommendations for going up and down and, pick your thing, everything from permits to
all the fees.
everything. So it's actually quite extensive list. It's actually more extensive than most cities do, to be honest with you. But that'll be before you guys to review, and it gets approved along with the budget. It's a yearly thing as well. As far as the salary recommendations, we're actually gonna probably start getting a study together. I don't know if we're gonna get that completely done during this, because it probably will be a little bit more extensive.
Yeah, I
Trying
mean,
to-
that's something that we are working on. Our next budget session together with the council is on March seventh.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that we'd have things ready by then, and to have some things that we can present to you, if not the complete budget.
So last year, the state approved to increase their pension contribution to help us from
Yes.
42% to 60.
Correct.
When are we expecting to see
So-
that?
I
Make it-
literally just, a flurry of emails went out on that yesterday, asking for input from the Treasury Department and also MERS, who's our funder, to see if they've heard anything, and they have not done anything with it yet. We're hoping, I think it was April-ish, for the Treasury to have a plan together of how we go about applying for it, but I don't think realistically we'll see that to the end of the calendar year at the soonest.
Are we
By the time
guaranteed to
MERS
get it?
Huh?
Are we, you said apply for it. I thought it was almost like a guarantee.
It
Is
is,
it?
but you
It's
still-
the
Well, you
formal,
still have to- you still have
that's
to
why I
go
wanna
through
make
the
sure it's a
process.
formal application, but we can still
Yes.
plan on it coming.
Yes,
Right,
yeah, it's
yeah.
all, basically every city that's underfunded is eligible
The
for
whole,
it.
the whole country is underfunded.
Oh, I
But
know.
We,
That's, I mean,
we
that's,
do still gotta go through the process, and we're on top of it, and plus our pension holders are on top of it as well.
Yeah.
You know, they want us to be funded, so we are definitely not gonna miss a beat on that one. It's just waiting for them to get it together to send to us to get going.
anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, you wanna just take a 10-minute break and shut
I
down?
have to restart.